up, and Lynnell Willingham is with us in studio. What up, Big O?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing well.
Aren't you tired of this time of year?
Actually, yeah, that's how I started the show. Actually, is that
that's good. I'm glad that you did that. See, that's pop for you.
I have gotten
wink, wink.
I was not tired of it until like this week. I really was enjoying this process, and then we got to this week, and I currently am out of stuff to say. I feel like, which I feel like I shouldn't say out loud. I feel like as a talk show host.
I know what you mean, though.
But
I'm in the same boat, brother.
How many times can we beat the dead horse? And now, then again, someone says something. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And so there will certainly be new ideas, and people should keep listening to this show. But I do feel like we have kind of. Everyone said their piece at this point, and it took until 2.5 weeks until the draft, but I do feel like a lot of people have said their piece. We did have a really good discussion on Take Command about a lot of this stuff this morning, though. Logan always gets my brain turning in a different way, which is good. And by the way, I will tell the folks listening, and you, in case you haven't heard this yet, our next 2 episodes of Take Command will feature Mina Kimes and Dane Brugler.
Wow. So talk about checking your boxes before you actually get to draft day.
Yeah, so
we got the best on.
We got great guests coming up. We got a couple more mock drafts. I was thinking about this earlier, Ant, because we're gonna do our mock draft tomorrow. Lynnell, would you want to come in for maybe next week and do like a mock draft or something like that?
I would love to do that. I'll be in studio tomorrow anyway with Russell.
Right. I think tomorrow Ant and I will get the mock 1.0 done.
Mock 1? I'm actually excited because now you get to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. You have to stand on this.
Yeah.
Well, like weathermen always say, we can be wrong all the time and have no real consequences, but with mock drafts,
there's obviously real consequences. They last at least a week.
Yeah.
And then you do another one. But I think Ant, tomorrow what we'll do is you and I will do like a consensus. Like we're going to be one front office that suddenly is hired by every team when they're on the clock.
Can I get the coats?
I just said we're working together.
Okay. We.
Yeah, that magical term. We.
He's a competitor, man. You look. Sometimes you got to let him off the leash.
Yeah, but maybe what we'll do is the following week we'll have you stay after you're on with Russell on Wednesdays. We're gonna do our mocks on Wednesdays, and we'll alternate. And yes, Ant, for that draft, we will allow you.
Well, hold on. Luck of the draw is luck of the draw. Maybe I want the Colts. Maybe I want to see the vision that's going on there.
No, we can try to organize it so each of us gets kind of one team that we really want, depending on how easily that divides by 3. But we can backtrack it to put Ant in the right position.
For sure.
I kind of want to give you the Commanders just to see what happens.
Well, I was going to say that would be a stipulation in my contract that doesn't exist for this mock draft.
Well, I hope that
I would love to get Washington.
I hope that
He's going to trade up before the draft. Something unreasonable.
Well, one of us would have the Bears, and if the Bears, if you got the Bears, and he calls you with whatever you want, whatever.
I'm telling you,
I'm not even going to answer the phone.
Yeah, that's the right move if you're the Bears.
Well, the right move in your mind, my phrase for the offseason, we're at the mercy of the evaluator. That applies for all 32 franchises. We don't know what's going to happen come Thursday night, 2 weeks from now.
That's 100% true.
It's the draft. Every year we get some type of shocker and stunner pick. Who's to say it's not at the top of the draft this year? I'm leaving out all options. I do not want to. I've made it a point of emphasis throughout the whole process not to pigeonhole myself into one thing because that's how I become upset because I'm emotional and can't control myself when it comes to this team. So I've come in with the mentality if you're open to everything, you can't get disappointed. That's where we're at.
I also think that's the right. That's the right.
It's the right one, but it's not fun.
Particular draft.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I kind of think that it's. I don't know. I just think with this particular draft, that's kind of where you want to be because at the end of the day, like I do think that they've got good options, which leads us to I think the question. So point is mock drafts 4:00 hour tomorrow, next week, and the week after, which is the day before the draft. Mina Kimes and Dane Brugler on Take Command. This is your home for draft coverage. The Team 980 / The Hoffman Show. We know what we're doing. That's a good slogan for us. The Hoffman Show. And put that on a T-shirt. The Hoffman Show. We know what we're doing.
You know what we're doing.
Sometimes. At least we play that way on the radio. The point is that you think how many quarterbacks are in the mix for Washington at 3?
Now, when you say it with that tone, Craig.
You have put so I will backtrack. I did you dirty.
I mean, terribly. I'm like a
I don't know if this explanation is going
to
to help, but you've put on your detective hat. You're sniffing around. You got your. I wouldn't do that into a microphone.
Well, I'm clear. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story. I got the lethal combo, the Benadryl, and your red eye and your itchy eye relief eye drops. I'm ready to go.
Excellent.
Because it's that time of year.
Yeah, it is. It's draft season. # allergy season.
Yes.
But you got your Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass out.
I do.
And based off of your research, your investigatory skills, how many teams do you think, or how many players do you think are in consideration at 2 for Washington, and based off of what?
I think a lot of this process has been different folks trying to connect different dots, and everyone's dot connecting is going to lead them to a different conclusion. And a conclusion that I've reached here really within the last 24 hours, and I brought it up last night on Overtime. I think we're going to do more than bring it up here tonight. We'll play some audio for the folks over on The Fan. But I think they've let you know throughout this entire process that they are going to do their due diligence. And I want to pull my phone here for a second just so I can read.
So you can do your due diligence?
So I can do my due diligence. One thing that I paid attention to is all of the different rumors and reports coming out in relation to that number 2 overall pick. And I do think some of it's hogwash depending on what you hear. Some of it's going to be accurate. I think no one knows at this point. And that's the beauty of this and why I can say what I'm about to say. Based on all of the different reports, you've seen McCarthy linked to the Commanders. You've seen Drake Maye linked to the Commanders. We've seen Jayden Daniels linked to the Commanders. The latest quarterback to skyrocket up, I don't even want to use that word, and Albert Breer told us in his piece not to use that phrase. The latest quarterback prospect that I've seen really start to get more buzz and more run ever since his pro day is Michael Penix from Washington. And if you go back to the beginning of the process, I think folks pre-national championship game is what I will say, probably had him mocked as a first-round quarterback, probably top 15. As the process has gone and played out here, the medicals have come out. Some teams have been okay with it. Some teams have had no comment on it. But when you run the 40 that he ran, and then you're starting to hear coaches within the NFL draft community start to really show praise to this guy, I think he's going to go a lot higher than people anticipate. And with Washington, really the draft starts with them, right? And
yeah,
we know Caleb's probably going to go one unless they take Jayden by surprise. Draft starts with them. I think they would be crazy not to be doing their due diligence on all these quarterbacks. And based on, at the end of the day, we don't know what that research and what that tape study is going to show them. I think 4 quarterbacks are in consideration right now for the number 2 overall pick. I would say Jayden Daniels. I would say Drake Maye. I do think the JJ McCarthy thing is real.
Yep.
And I think Michael Penix is going to enter that conversation as we continue to go out. They have a top 30 visit scheduled with Michael Penix. There are only 2 quarterbacks right now that they have scheduled top 30 visits with, Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix. They've had a private workout with JJ McCarthy. Haven't had that for Drake Maye yet. So still wondering. We know that they're interested. We assume that they're interested. But as the process continues to play out, I think their research isn't done.
No.
And as they get closer, we may continue to hear things come out about interest here, interest there. My thing is this: I'm not going to rule out any of those 4 quarterbacks at this point, I would say.
So here's what I would say in response to that. I think that there's a difference between doing due diligence and like taking something as an option seriously. And I just do not think that Michael Penix is a serious option at number 2. That's not to say that Michael Penix can't play. That's not to say that Michael Penix might not be a serious option that they are potentially investigating because they know that Las Vegas and Minnesota and possibly Denver are going to try to blow them away with an offer. There is a lot of continuing smoke out of Las Vegas that, like, Antonio Pierce is doing whatever he possibly can to position himself to take his guy, Jayden Daniels. And so they're going to offer, I would imagine, a pretty maximal package. And then at that point, you better be ready to take Bo Nix or Michael Penix at 13 because while you would like to be able to trade back up and take JJ McCarthy, at least by most boards, certainly mine, whatever my board is worth, the more realistic option is that you're going to be stuck at 13 and not have a chance to trade back up. Or even if you do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, those guys are gone and McCarthy is not an option for you if you can't get back up to 4. So doing your due diligence and understanding who Nix and Penix are means that you're in position to do what you got to do in the middle of the first round if you think that's the best thing for your franchise. There's no way you take Michael Penix at 2.
If you love him, my phrase is if you're Beyonce crazy in love, right? If you love him at 2, take him at 2.
Sure, but you shouldn't love Michael Penix that much at 2. I'm sorry, you shouldn't. The tape does not support that. Neither does the medical. And when you are old with bad knees, there is no Lynnell, take it from me. Take it from the old man on somehow of this show. God, I miss having people that were older than me come occasionally sit in that chair. Take it from the old man on the show. You never want to be the old guy with bad knees. There's no situation in life where being the old guy with bad knees is good. And I know that the age thing plays differently with different people. But at the end of the day, if you are going to be 29, near 30 years old at the end of your rookie contract with bad knees.
What is 30, though, in the NFL at quarterback, Craig?
It depends on who you are. I mean, there's guys that start really fading at 30,
I just
31,
find it funny
32.
that there are certain things that we want to harp on when it comes to guys. And I don't like that's just the one thing about him I feel like is the age and the medical. Other than that, you can't tell me watching him throw the football. And scouts and coaches say this too, that he is not it shouldn't be in the conversation for the best pure thrower in the class. Obviously, at Washington, he had optimal, circumstances around him. 2 really good tackles, 3 really good wide receivers.
Yep.
But you can say that about JJ McCarthy and other prospects as well, like that.
You can, but I think
the beauty's in the eye of the beholder when it comes to quarterback. And the one thing, what interests me from the Breer piece that he put out yesterday, there was an AFC scouting director that said he's got him as the second best quarterback in the class behind Caleb. You can't just tell me that there's probably one guy out there that's thinking that.
Of course not.
We can do all the scuttlebutt throughout the process, but when it comes down to it, the scouts and the coaches are the only opinions that ultimately matter, and we don't really know in certain situations how teams feel. Now, there's the consensus out there based on who's talking, but not everyone's talking, and that's the beauty of this process.
No, that's 100% true, but I think with Penix, there's some of the footwork. The way I phrased it earlier is if you took kind of like Drake Maye's problems and Jayden Daniels' resume, where you've got great production, older player, and the reason the age matters, hear me out. Here's why the age matters. You are more likely to improve if you are younger and don't have experience because you will improve with reps. The older you get, the more times you've done something, you tend to refine and get better and weed out your bad habits. Michael Penix has played a ton of football, and his footwork is still inconsistent. His footwork and his pocket movement skills, like all that stuff isn't good for him. That's
a flaw in his game, but it's not to say that, that other quarterbacks don't have that flaw as well.
Right, but who's the other quarterbacks that have it in this class?
I'm talking about in the NFL.
Who's the great quarterbacks that have that in the NFL?
You don't think when Patrick Mahomes first entered the league,
when he first entered the league,
he's still exactly though it's different. When you get to the National Football League, the argument that I would make is you're getting better coaching, I would hope, and you're able to hone in on some of the things that are your weak points.
For sure, but if you're 20 or 21, the chances that you succeed, it does matter. There's multiple reasons why. There's a I'm going to go here, a biology physiology element to this.
About mental and getting used to doing something over a period of time?
That is part of it. And breaking bad habits, but your brain is literally more pliable when you are younger. And by the time you get into your mid-20s, that's kind of when your maximum learning window as a human being generally slows. It's why it's easier to learn languages. It's why it's easier to learn math. It's why it's easier to learn everything when you are younger. Your brain is literally designed to learn when you are younger. That is like science. And then you have the psychology like habitual part, which is when you've played as much football as Michael Penix and you've ingrained bad habits into your processing, it's harder to undo and correct those versus a guy like McCarthy where I'm like, yeah, sometimes his footwork isn't perfect. I actually like his footwork a lot. I consider it a plus on his resume. But it's going to be a lot easier to fix that. Or the better example is probably Drake Maye, where the stuff's often a mess, but he's so young and doesn't have as many reps underneath him, so you're not undoing the bad habits. That's why the age unquestionably matters. It just does.
I don't know if I agree with that. I would say with Penix, though, the arm talent matters. And I think that's what people are going to be enamored by, and people are going to look at him and say, we can coach him up out of the flaws that he has in his game, but there are some things in his game that you just can't coach.
Yeah, but I would question his. To me, if you are an experienced player coming out and your flaws are footwork and processing, which there's a lot of not great clean reads on his tape. Now, he was super productive. There's a lot of really great stuff. His tape is very, very good. The medical is unquestionably the biggest red flag on his resume, which is going to be different team to team. But if your questions are processing and footwork, and you've got as much experience as him versus Jayden, where it's like, okay, that stuff I don't really have a lot of questions about. It's, can we expand, do the things that we like apply to different areas of the field that you haven't shown with as much frequency? That's the kind of prospect that I'm interested in as an older player versus a resume that screams 21-year-old that hasn't started a bunch of games, where like Drake Maye, you're in the mix for number 2 overall, and you're like, whoa, this dude started 50 games? This dude's a 24-year-old? Like, that matters a lot.
I'd rather take, despite what the flaws are, period, I'd rather take the more experienced guy in a lot of the cases in terms of starts and amount of games that he's played.
Let's continue this next. 301-230-0980 if you guys want to chime in as well. Why I think that the experience thing is a double-edged sword. We'll continue this conversation next. Lynnell with us. And Lynnell, looks like you got reinforcements on the phones. 301-230-0.
The cavalry has come.
The youngest. I did have a pretty funny YouTube comment the other day. Someone was like, Lynnell looks like he's about 14 years old. And I was like, wow. Well, they don't call him the youngest in charge movement because he's an old man.
Wow.
14
was a stretch.
I
do get carded when I do choose to partake in alcoholic beverages, so maybe that.
Hey, being young and being confused for youthful ain't a bad thing.
Yeah, I know it too well.
Well, I'm about to say, the babyface assassin himself.
Yeah, and also, especially right now, because you got your hoodie on up over.
He was at Z's wedding this weekend, and the Instagram is one of my favorite follows on the Instagram app. To see you cutting up the way you cut up, you don't even look like you're your age cutting up. Look like somebody should comment on it and say, "Where are your parents?"
Are you done?
You're like, you're too young to be drinking, man.
I'll let you guys fight and bicker off air. 301-230-0980. We're talking about the experience curve and whether it helps, hurts prospects, when it helps, when it hurts, here on the Hoffman Show. You want to just go to the phones?
Let's go to them.
All right, let's go. Let's go to Emery. Emery, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Emery, what's going on?
What's up, Craig?
What up?
What's up, Lynnell, man?
What's going on?
Thanks for having me on. All right, I got 3 points.
Okay, let's hit them.
We went from Heineke to Wentz to Sam Howell. All had problems with the line. All had problems with interceptions and turnovers. That's the first reason I'm going with Lynnell. Second is we haven't really fixed that offensive line, and I'm not quite sure that we're going to be able to get a left tackle that's going to be able to protect that quarterback's blind side. Second point for Lynnell. Third point is if we trade down twice, we trade down with, I don't know, Arizona, one of them, and then maybe trade back into 16 with the Colts, something like that. I don't know. Whoever it is, just throwing it out there.
There's just no way you're going to get the quarterback of your choosing at 16, though. That's a pipe.
It's
trade.
Also, you pick two teams that are not trading.
Yeah, that aren't going to trade.
What's your actual point, and then we'll react to it.
So point 3 is we can stockpile picks and then maybe pick a old tackle, Penix, and be able to get some type of pass rusher if Chop Robinson actually falls, or maybe Latu or Dallas Turner.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting.
I would say that
the trade back idea. I would say this, and I think I said it last week when I was on, when we kind of went back and forth on that. I think deadline spur action. I don't think Washington's received the best offer for the number 2 pick that they're going to receive, and based on the reporting,
they won't until they're on the clock.
Exactly, and how thirsty Vegas is, and how thirsty Denver is, and how thirsty Minnesota is. I do think there is a possibility that they get a deal that knocks them off of their feet. But even if they do trade back to, say, it's 11 where Minnesota is.
Yeah.
Say they do get back to where Minnesota is. I could see them not staying put there and then packaging
you trade back up. For sure. But I think
so. It's all on the table, I would say.
For sure. But I also think, like, you got 36 and 40 and you have some other picks. Like, you can trade back into the first round, stay at 2, get the quarterback you want as opposed to trading back and still get an offensive tackle. Can you get 3? No, but I also don't know that I want to have to pay 3 first-rounders 3 years from now? Like, that's a cap situation that becomes an issue.
That'd be a good problem to have. I would say that
it would be, but like you can also just avoid it by doing well in the second round. 20. Like, it's one thing to get the 5th-year option on a quarterback, or if you think there's a massive drop off, but like, it's not the craziest thing I'd heard. Back to the Penix stuff. Yes, Penix turnover history, very, very good.
Scramble percentage.
Jayden Daniels also has a very, very low turnover rate. And I think when you look at some of these other guys, like, yeah, that is a question in some games. But I think a lot of people, I think my whole thing with this, Lynnell, is people do way too much looking back in this process, both at who these players are in college and trying to draw comparisons to other players. And what you need to do is look forward. Look at the traits, look at who they are right now, and look at how that can fit and be coached in Washington or whatever other your team is in their situation. Because if player X that you're comparing them to from the past had gone to another team, their career would not go out the same way.
Yes.
So if you want a quarterback who has this trait that succeeded, I can give it to you. The same trait, I can also find one that failed. And I just think people do way too much looking back and thinking that the same players of who these guys are in college is who they're going to be in the pros, and it's not how this works.
No, it's not. And I think my golden rule with this, quarterback success, young quarterback success, is always so dependent upon fit. That's why we're starting to see now, quite frankly, guys have their career renaissance in certain places. Like Baker Mayfield did not work in Cleveland, wasn't a good fit. Geno did not work with the Jets, wasn't a good fit. Clearly, he's an NFL starter. I think you may see the same with Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. I'm curious to see Zach Wilson in another environment as well. Sam Darnold's going to get that chance this year with Minnesota, presumably. So I do think it's all about fit. But for Washington in particular, I think there's more that goes into the evaluation because of where they're going to play and the media scrutiny that you're going to be under. I think back when Zach Wilson was getting selected, I thought like Justin Fields was the best person to handle the New York media and things of that nature because he is a tough-skinned kid that's gone through adversity in his career and his life. I thought he better handle that. For Washington, that's why when you have these 30 meetings and you do the workouts and you take these kids out to dinner, like that's why the meeting part of the process is so important because you're coming into a place where you're expected to come in and succeed right away. This is a fan base that's been starved for an answer at that position, and we've stunk for the entirety of my life. So there's extra built-in pressure when it comes to being the quarterback, but here in Washington in particular.
I think that's 100% true, and it's actually one of the things that makes it hard because I don't feel like for the main 3 guys that they're considering, and even if you want to throw Penix in there, I don't think there's a separating factor of those. I feel like all those guys handle that stuff really, really well. And some of them are pretty, like Daniels' elite work ethic, like legendary work ethic. I've had people tell me like McCarthy is one of the best mental like athletes that they've ever dealt with in terms of how he handles, how he processes, how he thinks.
Breer told a really good story on Drake Maye and how he turned down a bunch of NIL money from Alabama and Ohio State to stay at UNC amidst those circumstances, losing linemen, losing receivers. So he's a guy that's also not 100%. Afraid of the grind and not going to duck it.
And like takes on a lot of responsibility as a player, like calling protections, all that kind of stuff. So all those guys, I think, pass that test, which is ultimately good and does make me think that whoever they take could absolutely succeed here. It's just who is the most likely to lead you to a Super Bowl. You want to do one more, or you got to go get ready for overtime?
I have to put something in my large but shrinking belly.
Oh, okay. Well, you go eat. We're going to continue this discussion next. We got a couple of calls, and I also have something from Logan that I want to play that I think helps explain the Penix point. So I'm sorry to play this behind your back. I couldn't quite get it ready for this segment, but you can listen while you eat. I'll listen.
Yeah, I'm walking to Chipotle.
Beautiful. Lynnell's going to go pull out the Odyssey app, plug in his headphones, and listen. You can do the same. You can, of course, watch on YouTube, too, at the Team 980, or listen on 106.7 HD2, 980 AM. We're everywhere you need to be here on the Team 980.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.